Welcome to today's video, my friend. It's Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, also known as the fighter pilot at your fingertips. And fingertip is a formation that fighter jets fly. So I kind of like that one. Let me know if you like that one in the description below. But it's another day, and it's another release of information on the F-47. The Air Force Chief of Staff on his X profile has released a graphic that's pretty epic. This graphic describes the jets that are in the Air Force inventory as their focus. There's other jets, but it looks like these are the jets moving forward. These are the vision that is going to bring the Air Force into the next generation of air dominance, with the F-47 leading the way. So in this video, I'll break down what this new information reveals, the new statistics, what it reveals about the F-47, but also more specifically, what it reveals about the collaborative wingmen, those stealth wingmen that could be controlled by a Wizzo in the back of the F-47, that's a weapon systems operator, or the pilot, if it's a single pilot platform. The Air Force seemingly loves the single pilot platform. Myself, having flown the F-15E in combat situations, I can tell you that having a weapons systems officer in the back, because they're operating, they are moving, they are flexing, they're doing everything they can to put that radar out there for an air-to-ground situation to give you success of finding a target. They're doing everything they can to get the sniper pod out there looking for the target. They can also use that in an air-to-air engagement, telling you what aircraft you might be going up against. So I think having that two-person platform would be huge. But at the end of the day, the Air Force seems to love that single cockpit, and I'm not going to knock on the single cockpit. I love flying the F-16 as well. I flew the F-16 on the Thunderbirds. I got mission qualified in that thing, and it was great. So both, I could see the advantages for both, but as you can see with the F-15EX, being that dual seat cockpit gives you the opportunity for it to act as an F-15C or an F-15E. F-15C would be air superiority. F-15E would be striking targets on the ground. But today, let's dive into what these new facts reveal about that beautiful F-47. Let's lock and load. Here we go. So it says it'll be operational from 2025 to 2029. There's been test flights of this thing happening already, and it depends on how much they need to do with the different G tolerances, the sensors. So that's why you've got that little 4-year chunk. It could be within those 4 years. I would expect to see this thing operational probably in 2027 to 2028. I would think that they would likely beat that 2029 number just because it's been tested and it's been flown for years prior to the announcement of it coming online. Next would be the quantity, 185. That's why I look at this F-47 as the quarterback. F-47 Mega Chad, F-47 quarterback. This is the real quarterback of the skies, and that's kind of the role that the F-22 fits right now. And that's the planned number of F-22s as well, as 185. So they're just throwing that same number out there. And to me, when you read into that, you read into the depth of that, you read into the context cues are showing us that this is kind of the replacement of the F-22. Whether that's been said blatantly or not, I think by having that 185 plus number there, they're saying this is the new leader of the sky. This is the new jet that will be directing these collaborative wingmen all around it to get everything done that it needs to get done. This is the new F-22. And its mission says air superiority. So, okay, this is making me think this thing won't be dropping bombs itself, but the collaborative wingmen that are surrounding it. Let's say it's 20 collaborative wingmen. Some of them are loaded out with bombs. Some of them are loaded out with missiles. Now you've got the option for this thing to just spray and pray. Not exactly pray, because it's going to be locked on with certainty. So this thing's going to be firing missiles from collaborative wingmen, but it could also be dropping bombs from collaborative wingmen. But if the main focus of this is air superiority, then again, maybe I would expect to see that single seat cockpit configuration. But who knows? This thing having the agility that it has, the versatility that it has, maybe they could add on that ground superiority role as well. But coming off the line with a pure air superiority role, that's the doctrine that the Air Force lives by. You have to have air superiority before you get anything else done. Now let's talk about the combat radius, and this is likely the number one reason why this thing is being built. They want it to be able to fly for long distances without having to aerial refuel, and then if you did aerial refuel, it would just be insane how long this thing could fly. So they're saying 1,000 plus nautical miles for a combat radius. Now a combat radius means the radius where it can go out, operate, strike targets, turn and burn, do what it needs to do, and then return to base. So that's obviously different from the range. The range, just the regular old range, would be how far this thing can actually travel and go. But that's not really realistic unless you're ferrying jets for air shows. Not that I've ever done that before. But your range is just going from point to point, where your combat radius is getting out there, turning and burning, striking targets, launching telephone pole sized missiles at the enemy, and then returning to base. So what this means is likely this thing can be used in the South China Sea in large swaths of ocean, massive swaths of ocean this thing can operate in. Now, going from Guam and striking targets somewhere in China, that's still a little bit too far of a reach. It's not exactly meant for that. You would need some refuelings to make that happen. But the fact that it could stay up airborne, and again, with the FAXX for the Navy being a variant of the F-47, who knows, maybe they're going to be exactly the same. That remains to be seen. That'll be a whole new video. You know, I'll keep you updated as soon as that comes down the pipe. But maybe it's very similar. And now if this thing's operating off of a carrier and has 1,000 nautical mile combat radius, it really opens up the areas for this thing to strike targets, to strike ground targets with its collaborative wingmen, and to launch AMRAAMs at enemies. So it's top speed, Mach 2 plus. A lot of people have asked, why doesn't it go faster? Why isn't it like the SR-72? Shameless plug, I have a video on that as well. Well, this thing isn't exactly meant to do what the Dark Star, the SR-72 or the SR-71 has done, and that is to outrun a missile. Nowadays, with hypersonic missiles and hypersonic weapons, it could be essentially impossible to outrun these hypersonic weapons. So what do you gain by going faster than Mach 2? Well, you gain that speed, obviously, a ton of speed, which modern missiles might be able to catch you anyways, but you also greatly reduce your stealth properties because you're going so fast. Your heat signature is going to be massive. Your IR signature is going to light up the entire night sky. So it's no use to you to go that fast if you can't stay stealth. And with current technology, it's hard to stay stealth while you're going that fast. And that brings me to the next point. For the stealth dominance, it says stealth plus plus. So what does that mean? Well, it likely means that it's got some massive guns when it comes to stealth. The plus plus to me, they're saying that is the focus of this thing. We want it to be massively stealthy. But again, you have to kind of give up certain things when it comes to maneuverability and stealth. When you look at the B2, massively stealthy, but that thing can't turn and burn. It's like a pig in space. If you try to turn it in some sort of an air engagement to get it out of there fast, it's not going to happen incredibly quickly because it's not meant for maneuverability. So I like the fact that the technology likely has gotten to the point where they can turn and burn with a stealth profile that rivals that of anything else out there, maybe more stealthy than the B2. The B2 is essentially the radar signature of a bird, like a small eagle. This thing is said to be the radar signature of a mosquito. So having the radar signature of a mosquito and being able to turn and burn, it just opens up so many different options that haven't been on the table before for fighter aviation. So that part to me is the most exciting. However, I'm wondering, and this is a question that will get answered with due time, that range, that 1,000 nautical mile combat radius, does that include taking off with external tanks and then punching those tanks off to then make it the stealth plus plus? Maybe it takes off with a stealth rating, and then who knows, you punch off certain tanks, it becomes stealth plus, then you punch off all the tanks and it's stealth plus plus. So now you've got the ability to adapt it into a stealth plus plus model, but maybe taking off, it's not quite stealth. So that remains to be seen as well, if they're banking on that 1,000 nautical mile combat radius being because of the tanks. And then quickly, we got to step to this other part of the graphic, these collaborative wingmen, the YFQ-42A, the YFQ-44A beasts. To me, this is the biggest combat multiplier of the F-47, is the fact that it can control drones. It can control these collaborative wingmen that can go out and do the bidding of whatever the F-47 wants it to do. Again, the quarterback mindset. So think about the F-47 out there operating over the South China Sea, out there operating somewhere in the Persian Gulf, and now you've got 15 different contacts on your enemy's radar scope. You don't know who the F-47 is. You probably can't even see the F-47. Like I said, probably about the size of a mosquito when it comes to its radar signature. But maybe these drones have a little bit more of a signature, but maybe you want them to. And maybe their signature can turn off and on. It can do what's called spoofing and pretend to be places where it's not, pretend to have a radar signature that it really doesn't have. It gets into this whole ghost mindset of fighter aviation, where you're essentially up in the sky ghosting each other. Not the kind of ghosting that your ex-girlfriend did. That kind was just cruel. this kind is awesome because it's a newer technology of fighter aviation than what has ever been seen before. And when it comes to those collaborative wingmen, I would expect them to come online right at around the exact same time as the F-47, kind of rolling off the line in tandem. But the nice thing about these collaborative wingmen is they can just make these super stealthy and update them and just plug and play along the way. So they can release the F-47. Hey, look, yeah, we've got the F-47, but then keep different variants of these collaborative wingmen completely classified. And that just gives you the ability to update them and interchange them, swap them out, use parts from one, build another. And I think it keeps you really nimble and really agile when it comes to fighting adversaries and threats. And that's exactly what General David Alvin said when he released this graphic. He said, "Our Air Force will continue to be the world's best example of speed, agility, and lethality. Modernization means fielding a collection of assets that provide unique dilemmas for adversaries, matching capabilities to threats while keeping us on the right side of the cost curve." Unique dilemmas to adversaries. Just think about that. I mean, even in the recent altercation, Operation Sindoor, with India and Pakistan, imagine if 50 of those contacts of the Pakistan Air Force's radars were collaborative wingmen that could turn on and off their radar signature. Now you're spoofing that entire Air Force while the other jets that you want sneak undetected to launch their payload. So many options for deception here. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, deception is power. And I think this F-47 really gives us the ability to move things to the next level when it comes to this deception. And then matching capabilities to threats. I mean, that's fine. If you look at China's J-36 or their JXD, matching our capability to those threats. So what those two platforms can do, like an air superiority fighter and a strike bomber, likely that's what the Chinese versions of the F-47 are, and matching our capabilities to them. Yeah, I get that. And I think he's kind of toying with the adversaries here, because my ultimate perspective would be you want to be a step ahead. You want to be one step ahead of your adversary. You don't necessarily need to be 1,000 steps ahead. So if your adversary is here, you don't need to be 1,000 times better than them, because maybe that reveals technology that then just gives them the ability to develop and adapt to. But if you're just at a 11 while they're at a 10.9, oh, they got to 11. Oh, we're going to go to 11.1. And we just kind of step up with these collaborative wingmen. Again, that gives you the ability to stay ahead of them. So you're 2 steps ahead, maybe even just 1 step ahead, as long as you're a step ahead. And then alternatively, it keeps costs down. So you don't need to be a million times better. I'm a million times stronger than I was yesterday. No, you want to be one little increment stronger than you were yesterday. That's why you're crushing the gym. But this keeps us on the right side of the cost curve. And that's what Alvin gets at as well, because the cost curve is incredibly important. If you just build one and done, like we've done with the F-22 and now the F-47, you've got 20 plus years in between iterations of these technology, you're really putting all your eggs in one basket. So this critical juncture where now we can stay ahead of the cost curve and build these collaborative wingmen that stay in front while keeping us in a cost domain that is equal to the threat. I totally agree with the cost domain being equal to the threat, because you don't need to be dropping $1 million bomb on a terrorist with a Kalashnikov AK-47. It just doesn't make sense. The scale and economics of warfare matters. And I think we're getting ourselves to a point as an Air Force where we're understanding that you can step up incrementally with these collaborative wingmen. And if you can't tell, that really gets me excited. So I'll leave you with that, guys. Thanks so much for checking out this update. I've got a lot of content coming to you, a lot of geopolitical updates, a lot of current event updates. All the different things that you have been asking for are pretty much arriving. So thank you for the opportunity to bring this to you. I greatly appreciate it. If you would dominate the like button, that would help me grow the channel. With the millions of views, we've only got a few 100,000 subscribers, which, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for. But if we could grow that number, I could essentially do videos like this for you every day and keep this content rolling your way.